Hello, welcome to the Chapter 4 We Ride the Storm commentary, which may or may not have been filmed directly after the Chapter 3 commentary. Note even the same Duplo in the background where my son has been making some kind of safari park on my shelves. I am also still in my uniform, very exciting. Yes, I am not even going to pretend that I don't do these back to back. Alright, so today, as I said, we are talking about chapter 4, which was originally Miko's first chapter. So this one underwent a little bit of a change, which was to have some of its initial discussions of Miko and Tanaka as being not Emperor Kin's children removed because they were moved to the first chapter. That was really important for us to know right up the front in the very first chapter. And so I shifted all of that information out of this one, which allowed me to put a bit more of the how that affects their kind of day-to-day political existence into this chapter. So it changed a little bit. So this chapter was mostly like this. It was the second chapter of the book, but Miko's first chapter, which is a little bit confusing because now it's chapter 4 and Miko's second chapter, but whatever. And so originally this was the one that contained Miko's inciting incident. So you could look at the incident at Chamois Field as being the inciting incident when, you know, Tanaka and her get fired upon. But in a lot of ways it's not. You know, it is a look at the way her world just works. You know, that particular incident in and of itself wouldn't start them on a journey that they weren't already on. It's kind of showing why they're on a journey. So I guess contrary to what I said in the commentary for chapter 3, where I said that that it's not really a day in the life of Miko, her first chapter, it kind of is. You know, it's just not an average day. Most of her days would probably be quite boring, but it's a day in which you get to see the effects that being a you know, not actually a Tsai has on her day-to-day life. So it's just a dramatic one, but it is still kind of like a day in the life of Miko, and not really an inciting incident at all. So this one is the one that has the inciting incident for Miko, and this is the one that sets her on this particular story journey. So when we open this chapter, they are at Koi Castle doing their day-to-day thing. She's, you know, practicing her archery, which she does a lot. You know, we need to know that she practices a lot and she's good at it because she's going to use it. So we have to be able to see that, you know, the whole... What's it called? The gun on the wall. Chekhov's gun. There we go. I got there. It's, you know, just not a great brain day. Anyways, so we start with that so that we can see what she kind of does as her preparatory training and everything as a day-to-day thing. We then get to see what was most important about this chapter, actually, is her conversation with her mother. So up to this point, we haven't actually met Empress Hana, really. She's like, sticks her hand out of a vehicle in the first chapter, and that's about it. So this is where we get to really meet Empress Hana for the first time. So especially important for those who haven't read the prequel trilogy. So the prequel trilogy to this, Hana is actually a point of view character. So we already know her a bit and kind of understand about her. Whereas this one, we get to see her from the point of view of her daughter, which is really quite important because, you know, the person that Hana used to be is no longer the person that Hana is, because this, you know, 17-year interval here has made quite a huge difference to the way she approaches the world, and also even the way that she would see herself is not the same way that her daughter sees her. So you know, it's a really important meeting for us to see the ways in which she's essentially failing as a mother to her daughter, and what consequences that is ultimately going to have. So it's quite a simple conversation, really. For those who've read it, it's pretty much Hannah saying, "Here, you're gonna marry this dude. I don't care if you don't want to." She doesn't really say "I don't care," but she essentially means "I don't care. You should do it for the good of the empire, my dear." It's pretty much "I don't care. You're gonna do this because I'm telling you that it's your duty to do it, and this is the way that you've been brought up." Um, she's not reckoning with the fact that Miko has her own plans and determination, because ultimately, Hana has been kind of ignoring her daughter, and we need to see that. We need to see that she doesn't really know. She doesn't really know who her daughter is because she focused too much on her son. There's plenty of reasons for that. It's going to be a whole personal journey thing through the story, but that is essentially what we need to see in this scene. We need to see that her mother has essentially failed her. She's failed Tanaka too, but in a completely different way. But we just need to see that, that Hana is so focused on her own plans, that she doesn't see the ways that other people have their own plans and could help or get in the way, or anything else. So that's pretty important. So we need to see the relationship between the two of them is not strong. And it's even weaker from Miko's point of view than it would be from Hana's point of view. So if you were to ask Hana, how do you think your relationship with your daughter is? She would probably say, "Hey, it's it's pretty good. We're fine." Whereas Miko would be like, "What relationship? I don't have a relationship with my mother. She doesn't tell me anything," which is probably quite true of a lot of mother-daughter relationships. Uh, Anyhow, so that was really the most important part of this chapter, because the relationship between Miko and Hana drives a lot of decisions, or at least is kind of behind a lot of decisions that both characters make throughout the story. So I feel like that was really important to get in there up front. So, and having done that, we then also really need to get an idea for the relationship between Miko and Tanaka. We get a little bit of it in the first chapter, which was originally not there at all. So this was originally the first chapter. So the relationship between Miko and Tanaka in this one, I needed to really be able to show the way they are together but separate. I think was really the goal, in that they are twins. They want to roll together, do things together, be kind of a team. But in a lot of ways, Tanaka has kind of developed his own "I am going to be the emperor." I mean, they have got an extremely misogynistic society, so he is expected to be the one who will sit on the throne one day because he is the boy. So he will do it. While he's always insisted that Miko do all the same lessons that he does, and so she is equally as well prepared. She's still the girl, so I guess in his mind, it's always sort of been he would sit on the throne and she would kind of be the secondary, the adjunct, the kind of helper. He never says that, but we need to kind of see that he is chafing at the idea that she is making plays, and making plays without him. So when she is suggesting this is a thing we should do, and he is getting all grumpy about the fact that what is he supposed to do, just sit around and sew, it is directly a response to the idea that he feels like she is doing his role, because he doesn't see this as an equal partnership. And it is something that Miko will kind of come back to later. Again, she has been brought up in this extremely misogynistic society, and therefore she probably feels that is normal and fine. My brother will have the throne and I will help him. As much as I say we're going to do this together and we're going to be a team and we're going to roll Kisia side by side, I know deep down that this is kind of the way that it's going to work. So really she's just trying to help because she feels like she is more sensible and aware of what's going on, whereas Tanaka is a bit more brash and brazen and not always what you need in a diplomatic situation. So in this chapter, when she's saying she's going to go and do things, ultimately she really is doing them for the team, but you can already see the kind of little inklings of the fact that she has her own personal ambition that is not tied to Tanaka. It's a very central piece of her, which we're going to keep coming back to throughout the series. This idea that I think she says in a later book, this idea that it was okay to be the one that was just going to be there beside Tanaka until it wasn't, until she realized it was a thing that she wanted for herself personally, that she wants to sit on the throne and be the empress with no requirement of being beside her brother or married to an emperor or anything else, but in her own right, so that we're sowing seeds of this, and we need to see this in the way that she goes on to interact with the Chiltern ambassador as well, not just the way that she interacts with Tanaka. Also having to see the ways in which she constantly feels like an outsider of an outsider, right? So they're not really part of the court in the same way. They're kind of sectioned off from everybody else. She doesn't really have friends, but even the people she thinks of as friends, like Ito and Tanaka are in love with each other. She has no part. She's a third wheel in her only friendship. So this sense of true isolation is also a really important thing to get across. This sense that she's always had to be alone and self-sufficient. And while she relies on them in a sense of like, we're trying to do this together, she also feels like she can't rely on them because they are their own unit and she has to be her own person. So that was a really important thing to get across in this chapter as well, to make sure that we understand how that dynamic works, so that when we're sort of moving on through the story, we have a really like a basic understanding of how her childhood went. It was rough. There were assassins. The people that she thought of as friends ultimately ended up kind of drifting away and falling in love with each other, and then it was just her. Meant to be sitting kind of in the back seat of this, imperial thing, and realizing that's not what she wanted. So the rest of this chapter was really just needing to get across the relationship with the Chiltains, the fact that Miko had plans, so her whole conversation with the Chiltain ambassador I think was actually completely changed between the self-published version and the traditional version. I think the conversation with the ambassador and the conversation with Tanaka and Ito slightly altered because the Chiltan plan slightly altered. So I think those two things are actually politically different. Therefore, the conversation was different. Ultimately, it still goes the same way. They still have their conversation. It's still a bit of a fencing dance thing where they're not really entirely saying what they want to say, just showing that Miko has this ability to be political and sneaky and all of that kind of stuff, which again, I think was really important, that she has her own plans, that she's her own person, and that she is trying to make plays. Even if her brother really hates it, she is the one out there trying to make this happen. And then having, made it really clear that her brother really hates it, we finally get to the inciting incident right at the end of this, which is her going back to their rooms to find that her brother is gone. So he has decided, screw this waiting around. I'm not going to let my sister do all this stuff for me. I am the one who is going to lead stuff. Nobody listens to me. I'm going to go and do the big fancy thing that we really need to do in order to get support, which, is in his mind attacking Dom Leovilius as he comes across the border. And, the reason that he wants to do that is because anti-Chiltan sentiment is really high, especially in the north, where they've been dealing with raids by Chiltans a lot. So while they're in a part of the empire that is was very loyal to his father, his biological father, and very averse to the current emperor, it's a really good time to make a big showy display, to attack some Jiltans, to stand up and say, actually, I am going to be your heir. I should be the emperor. Support me. Because he's just sick of sitting around and waiting and is really very sure that an assassin having come for him in the first chapter, it's really, he's going to be dead soon if he doesn't do anything. So, it makes sense. It's not what I would do. It's not very sensible and quiet and sneaky. It's very big and brash in Tanaka. So, that being the inciting incident of Miko's storyline, because ultimately it sends all of what she currently knows and all of what she currently plans off on a completely different tangent. Because now the plans that she was making with the Chiltans aren't going to work. Now Emperor Kin is going to totally know that they're up to something. And for all she knows, her brother isn't coming back. So, she's very, now we're lost and need a new plan, which is essentially, that's it. That's her inciting incident. And now we have Miko as well as Cassandra off on their journeys, and we just haven't really had the inciting incident for Ron yet, which we will cover next week when we talk about chapter 5. So until then, I guess that is it. I say that all the time. It must get really irritating. I get annoyed listening to it, and I get annoyed saying it. I need to find a new sign-off. Goodbye.